Hello there, people of the internet. My name is Udwe Jagero, and this is Dialogue with Jagero. We are continuing our amazing episode on cancer and cancer treatment and management with Omondi Ochuka. Omondi Ochuka, I think one of the things that people fear about cancer is that how am I going to treat it?
Cost.
How am I going to afford it? There are things in the body that are very difficult and expensive to treat. So perhaps starting this episode, give us an overview of the treatment of cancer and why it's mostly very expensive. For example, why chemotherapy is upwards of 10,000 per hour?
Usually the cap is between 25 and 35K a session.
Per hour.
A session.
A session is how long?
45 to 2 hours, 45 minutes to 2 hours.
So that's a lot of money to be charged 35. You know, why is it? Is it because it's? Do you think that the higher the risk of dying, the higher the risk of losing your life, the higher the risk of treatment?
Yes, that's absolutely very true. One, because most of the diseases or the illnesses that are very hard to treat, some of which are incurable or rare, plague medicine, even the most advanced forms of medicine, very much. Because as much as we have done research as the human species, there's very little progress we have made in terms of cracking the code. What do I mean by cracking the code? For example, there was a time where diseases like diphtheria or malaria or dysentery, or remember 1997-98, there was an outbreak of kipindupindu.
Yeah.
And there was a huge public health initiative by the Kenyan government. Remember polio, kick polio out of Kenya. There was like a very picture. For those who will watch it will remember it. There's a picture of a photo of somebody kicking polio out of the Kenyan map. So as much as we have had initiatives globally and locally that help to target cancer treatment and care, we have not cracked the code of understanding what is the nature of cancer. Now let's go back a little bit, because you have asked me, why is it that it is very costly? Number one, you have to look at the nature. As we were talking about understanding cancer in episode 2, we were seeing that there is a back and forth that happens during cancer treatment. This back and forth is courtesy of prolonged tests and scans and prodding. Now imagine if you are to go to test for malaria, what do? See, they take your blood sample and then they take to the lab. Now with cancer, it's not just the blood sample. They do an MRI, they do an ultrasound, they do CT scan, they do it was some very most advanced, like even a PT scan, a PET scan, which is some of the most advanced forms of scans. A PT scan alone is about 60,000, and in Kenya, it's only Aga Khan that is offering it currently. So first of all, the testing and the scanning and the blood test, and it's always done to manage and also do what is called monitoring to see how are you responding to the drugs. Are you getting any progress? What is the size of the tumor? How is the cell activity around the tumor? So this can actually push the cost very, very high. And then number two, the research that goes into cancer medicine is costly. And there is a bit of a higher moral ground when it comes to cancer medicine research, because you do not want to introduce a drug that's going to worsen the situation than it already is. So before they even pass the phase 2 or the phase 3 of research, where it is now viable for human consumption, there is a very thorough back and forth, and there is a lot of gatekeeping in the pharmaceutical industry. That's why you find that most pharmaceutical multinational corporations are in the US or Germany or India, particularly India. In fact, India is one of the best. It ranks one of the best globally, because they have a robust research and development on not just cancer meds, but also generally medicine in the whole world. And then so now we also look at
What do you mean by gatekeeping?
Gatekeeping means that many people will say that it is a conspiracy, but I always say that whenever there is some gossip, in a particular area, there is something that needs to be addressed. And if you're burying our head that there is no conspiracy to why cancer med is very costly, why cancer is a multi-billion-dollar industry, then we are not being honest with ourselves.
How big is it?
It's big. It's almost, people are quoting to the tunes of 2.3 trillion, and it's a lot of money, If there was a cure, and you see, for you to get a drug, let's say this is a drug, it's chemotherapy that I've done my research, and I'm the lead researcher for it. I have to obtain a patent. I have to get it for a particular period, usually between 8 to 25 years, depending on what agreement you have with the bodies that control, like FDA. So by the time you release it so that other people can start making generic is like a copycat of the drug. It could be slightly less costlier, but this is a lot of gatekeeping because big pharmas have a way of chattering and pushing the envelope below the table. We don't see it happening because when you go to the hospital, you don't see these things happening. You don't see that a doctor was called by a big pharma somewhere and told, you're going to use this chemotherapy regimen. And globally, remember there is a standard. If you go to Argentina, you go to Chile, you go to Pakistan, you go to Botswana, there is a standard operating procedure for chemotherapy. In other words, if you have liver cancer, and I am in Kenya, and someone else is in the UK, there's a standard medicine to use. Why is that so? How did they arrive to that medicine? And of course, just the same way as there is big companies like Microsoft and Google, there's a way they control the stake and how narratives are voiced within this industry. So that if there is any dissenting opinion, they usually thwart it very fast. And this has a way of pushing back development and progress that can allow for less costlier medicine to expand, for many people to have equitable access to cancer care and medicine. That's what I mean by gatekeeping. So we can't just sweep it under the rug and say that, it's just a conspiracy. It's not. There is a truth in there, and we really need to take care of it. And we also need to focus mostly as Africans. So because there are some cancers that are very common amongst Africans, for example, lung cancer, And if we do not do research that is very specific to the African people, the African race, then we are going to be lagging behind because we are not able to offer homegrown solutions. We're going to be dependent on the Western models of cancer care. Now let's go back to why is it that cancer care is very costly. At top of the list is we do not have, there's something called essential medicine. Would you know what it means?
No.
What do you think it means?
Essential medicine.
Let's say in cancer, what would an essential medicine mean for you?
Because I think cancer is about tumor and how it spreads. So I would think that that essential medicine is stopping the spread. I would think.
That's very correct.
Yeah.
That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is there is what we call symptom management. A disease presents or manifests itself in terms of symptoms. So, for example, I have a medicine that I'm supposed to take lifelong. It helps me. It helps the liver not to reject part of the newly introduced culture that I got from a donor. So many people, for example, who have liver transplant have that kind of a medicine, and they take it almost lifelong. You're not supposed to miss it. So essential medicine is something that you have to always have it because it helps you bargain life. It helps you keep yourself alive, or at least manage the symptoms so they're not very dire and harsh on the body. So we do not have pharmaceutical companies locally that manufacture essential medicine. So what do? We rely on the West. We rely on importing these drugs. So this pushes the cost very highly. For example, if there is a slight hint of an upward surge of the dollar rate, what do you think is going to happen next time? The cost is going to go up. I have a friend of mine whose daughter has sickle cell. He's been a very good friend of mine since high school. And he always shares with me how one of the essential medicine for sickle cell disease is called hydroxyurea. It's for pain management. And sometimes it's really costly, where you have to buy it at every given point when they have a pain crisis. So imagine for households that do not have that kind of income stream. They suffer a lot. So that goes to the second point. There is very limited resources and high cost. Contrast that. Limited resources, high cost. So the amount of money that we have in the country that circulates, the amount of opportunities that we have in the country, and even globally, if you expand it, if you expand the view, you realize that many households have very little stream of income coming in. The taxes are there, but unapata kidogo. So that which goes out when a member of the family or a member of the household falls sick is higher. The flow is very high. So you are stuck between, do we afford supper or do we buy the essential medicine for our patient? Can we skip today so that tomorrow this guy is going to go for chemotherapy? Will we be able to afford chemotherapy coming on Thursday? Tunado. Maybe we'll skip. And when you skip, it creates a complication in your cycle treatment. It means you have to review it again. It means that the test you did might no longer be viable. The doctor will ask you, can you do another test, because I do not know what's going on in your body. That already has created another flow of cost. So the limited resources is affecting the cancer cost significantly. Number 3, we have what we call specialized equipment, or, for example, diagnostic tools. For a long time, I don't know if you remember, I once shared with you about when at one point I was number 1913 on the radiotherapy list in KNH.
Number?
1913.
1913?
1913 on the list. So in other words, about 1900 people have to go for radiotherapy before my turn comes.
And how quickly would you be able to finally be the next online?
It's very easy, because unlike chemotherapy, radiotherapy doesn't take long. It might take between 25 minutes and you're done. But what caused this was the equipment at KNH broke down. And we know the dysfunction that happens in most public hospitals, where, first of all, we procure an equipment such as that, and then we do not have radiologists or radiographers who are trained for that particular machine. Let's say it's Siemens or it's Philips. So when it comes, it doesn't come. It comes with a manual, but there is no technician who can actually operate it or repair it or maintain it. So when it breaks down, what happens? They have to call those guys in Japan or Germany and tell them, our machine broke down. Or you have to send somebody to train for that specific machine. Or when you procure an obsolete, it means that Japan has already moved further ahead in nuclear medicine, but you're procuring an equipment that was used in the 90s. In the 80s, it was the darling, but now it is not. It's an old dog. No? So when it breaks down, and Kenyatta used to, many patients all over the country used to rely on Kenyatta. And I'm happy and grateful that currently there are so many other centers around Kenya. There is Moi Teaching and Referral. There is Kijabe. There is Tenwek. Some of them are private. There is Russia. There's Kisii. There is Mombasa, which was used to be called district hospital. So there is a lot of centers around, and I wish we could decenter healthcare. And that goes to the third reason why there is the high cost of cancer care, the training. Remember, we always say that we need to train our people so that it reflects the market needs of our country. But that's just half of the truth. In truth, sometimes when we train ourselves, we teach ourselves life. It's not that we are going to utilize this knowledge. It's not that we are going to commercialize the knowledge production that systems that we have. You see, I get this argument a lot, and people say that, oh, this person did this course and it is not marketable. And yet, knowledge is supposed to help you humanize yourself. So I always feel that the way our medics are trained is still lacking some sense of humanity in it. In other words, even for themselves, when you are not trained well and you're not equipped for the 21st century ultra-modern medicine, it means that you're going to meet scenarios and case studies that you're not well fit for. I don't know whether doctors are going to be understanding this. We are not actually criticizing you or putting your training in jeopardy. We are actually asking you that if you are trained, for example, in tropical medicine, do you know why sometimes when you, for example, you travel to the UK and you have a certain disease that's not prevalent in the UK, they have a difficulty treating you. Yes. It's the same thing here now, because the more life advances, the more we are also getting to meet very difficult situations. Yes, medicine has advanced, but also so is the disease. Understand?
Yeah.
That's why we are having this back and forth, that a tumor presents itself with a very difficult point of view. You have all the diagnostic tools, but you cannot figure out a better treatment plan for this patient. You see the conundrum. It's very difficult to deal with. So if we train our doctors well and we inspire a certain humanity, I have a feeling that many doctors do feel that when we tell them that this is a calling, to be honest, the human body and the dignity of the human life creates that moral ground, so that it is not just a profession just like, let's say, a mason, or a janitor. It's more. And this is why sometimes people tend to think that it's almost divine for you to be a doctor. And when we say Jesus heals, Jesus is a representation of divinity. It's almost the same way as a doctor. So there's a certain way you're supposed to approach your training. So our doctors are not properly trained, and sometimes they have to improvise. When you have to improvise in your form of work, you might improve your craft, but you might also endure so many difficulties before you improve your craft. You might lose lives that would have not been lost. So, and then that goes to the second, to the fifth point: specialized equipment and facilities. We are moving in.
Before we talk about specialized, let's go back a little bit to the doctor's issue. For example, I think that if you are, for example, I have insurance, and my insurance is very expensive.
Yeah.
About $3,700 in a year. That's upwards of $400,000. But I feel like even that insurance still cannot take care of me. I would imagine that at that price I should be having a family doctor.
Yeah.
You see, who is proactively checking out on me, proactively checking out on my daughter, proactively checking on my wife. Not that I must present myself to the hospital when I'm sick, and that is when they start the process of looking at the reason why I'm sick. Why is it that with all that insurance money that we are paying, there is no doctor that can even say, look, have you gone for, what is that test they do for you at the end of the year to look at every part of your life?
Comprehensive test.
No doctors ever asked me to do it, you see. And I also feel like there is so much love lost between patients and doctors. And so you find like in Kenya, the doctor is telling you that, well, not the doctor, but the doctor's handler is telling you that you have an appointment at 3. You go there at 3 and there are 20 people that have not been seen. So the question is, why are they telling you to come at 3? And then there is I feel like in Kenya, and in Africa, but most parts of Africa, the doctors are so aloof in the way in fact, they don't even want to know your name.
It's not personalized.
Yeah, they don't even want to know your name. You're just another guy with a gonorrhea.
You're a statistic.
Yeah, you're just another guy with pneumonia. You're just another guy. But that, I don't know whether it is, but you talked about it.
Humanity.
You talked about it that sometimes, you remember when you're talking about how to relay the news to the patient, to the cancer patient, about how long they have got to live. And you talked about how they deliver the information, sometimes in a very brutal way. And I feel like most of us as sick people, we are treated as such, very brutally. You see, no follow-up. You are given like, okay, the doctor is trying to see you, and there are 30 other people waiting at the door. Surely it becomes very difficult for that doctor to take some time and talk with the patient. So I don't know whether it is that we are so many of us are sick. I don't know whether doctors are few. So that is one of the biggest problems that I sort of have with doctors in Kenya. And I have suffered with pain for the last 15 years. And I can't say for sure that there is a doctor that has had sympathy for what I am going through. When you go to them, it's just a one-off thing. Like, you go to the hospital, they give you this drug, they don't follow up. But I'm thinking that if I am working for a client's website and there is something that is broken in this website for the last 1 year, why is it that I cannot dig deeper? And find out. I mean, why is Jagero probably having a problem with the heel for such a long time? What is the problem? They told him to reduce weight. I've lost 10 kgs. You see, I've been having pain in my limbs. Nobody's taking care of that. So it is extremely frustrating. And I don't think I can have a web design client for that long. And they still keep coming to me to solve their website issues. And I'm not doing anything about it. Like right now, why I am in pain almost every other day, but I gave the hospital, the insurance company, almost 400,000 to take care of me and my family. And they're basically not doing that. So that for me is the biggest problem that I'm having with the healthcare.
It's something that I think we have both shared intimately at some point. And it's very true that although compassion should and is the center of
medicine. That is the word I
medicine,
was looking for.
Yeah, compassion.
Yeah.
It's at the center of medicine. It should be. It ought to be. There is no way around it. You see? And that goes to what you see amongst many doctors. I mean, I've had Dr. Mohammed has been very kind to me, even though the last time I saw him was 2017 in India. This guy calls every other day. He's the one who actually even informed me about the clinical trial that I was telling you about. So I feel very ish about how doctors do treat patients. And to be honest, once I learned to be a proactive patient, I stopped taking bullshit from doctors. I'll just be honest. I do not care how long you went to school to study medicine. But if you're not compassionate and you're not listening to me, then it means that we cannot. Healing is a collaboration. Just like I told our viewers yesterday in the episode. It is a collaboration. So if I don't give you enough resource, you're going to be, treating in the dark, groping in the dark, trying to find, Ochuka, and I feel like, you're simply blind, just touching around. But if I give you enough resource in terms of the conversations I'm giving you, the narratives, even my thought process, the way you see me, how I talk, the choices of words that I'm choosing, then you are able to see, this is the best approach to take. But you find that many doctors, first of all, I would not want to blame them fully, but there is also the responsibility that they need to take. They need to be held accountable for it, because one, on the other part, there is the doctor-patient ratio in Kenya. It's very, 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 very burdening. And this is one of the things that they have been actually talking about in their collective bargaining agreement with the government since way, way back. And the government has not really honored it. And even right now, when there is a crisis or with the medical interns, it means that, just like what you said, if you go to, if you're booked for an appointment at 2 p.m., you go there, you find almost 40 people online. This particular doctor, has not even seen half of the people he or she was supposed to see in the morning. So there's a bit of a lag. Why is that so? Because there are few. And this is why I was telling you, specialized training for oncologists is very important. Remember, an oncology is just somebody who treats cancer. He has well and in-depth knowledge of cancer. He's the doctor. But now we are moving towards 21st century where we have very specialized treatment for cancer. So if you're, for example, if you're a woman and you have reproductive cancer like cervical cancer or ovarian cancer, then perhaps maybe a gynecological leaning oncologist would be better for you and not just a general GP, you see. But if you do not have that, then sometimes this general doctor is the one who is supposed to see you until maybe they feel like, now you need to be referred to see a specialized doctor. But these specialized doctors are very few. So when you go to that clinic, it's either you have to wait for a longer period, or when you go to that clinic, you find a longer line waiting. So that's the one side of it. The other side of it is how we do not want to use innovation. I don't see a reason why, because even in supermarkets, there are people who do very good modeling in terms of time series. You look at how customers come, for example, into Carrefour or Naivas during peak times, during off-peak hours, during weekends, and you're able to determine that at any given moment in time, this particular number of customers or patients enter this hospital or facility. This doctor usually take an average of, let's say, 15 to 30 minutes to see a patient. You understand? So we are able to distribute so that a patient does not come and they waste the whole day. There are days when I would go to KNH and you take the whole day, you leave there at midnight. It means your whole day of productivity gone like that. You understand? And so now imagine somebody coming from Lesenyakach or coming from some village in Kitui. They have to go all the way to Machakos cancer care and then take the whole day. That time they were supposed to go to the farm or take the kid to school, it's all lost. So productivity and your sense of self is also at question here. But if we could even leverage on technology a little bit, we can be able to know that this patient can take this amount of hours and the doctor can actually distribute their hours around this time. And then also, I think that the doctor just sitting on the other side of the table and taking notes is not medicine, honestly. We need to be more human. It's very important even for this particular, the reason why we have this is a conversation. Nobody knows it all. You have a side and I have a side, and we are sharing it with the viewers, hoping that the viewers will meet us somewhere in the middle. You understand? So these conversations have a way of healing people. But if you sit on the other side and you're so put on the pedestal of your own self, you don't think that a patient from some villager who doesn't even know how to write their name can actually help you treat them better, then you are very condescending. And many doctors have that attitude. This I know it all. I was the smartest in my class. I went to school for 7-8 years. And so they treat you as if you're a statistic. You're just the next patient. And this is why I'm telling you that many doctors take very little initiative that,
I hope that you're enjoying this program. Over the last 15 years, I have been working online for clients in America, in Europe, and all over the world. And that is why it pains me a lot when I see a lot of African brothers and sisters saying that they do not have a job. Now, this is the problem. A lot of people are trying to look for a job in 2024 in their own town, in their local area. Now, the truth is, there are no jobs in Africa, at least not so many jobs. The good news is that we have internet, these days. We have a tablet, we have a computer, we have a phone, and that means that we can do a lot of jobs, and those jobs are online. That is why over the last 4 years I've been writing a book that is called Digital Goldmine. It is a book that explains to you how you can earn money online. The 18 hustles that I've chosen are basically for Africans, because what happens when you are doing online jobs is that payment is usually a problem. So these 18 side hustles that I have put together in this book, you can be paid very well and very conveniently. Okay, so the book is only 1,000 Kenya shillings. That is about $10. You can buy it in Kenya using pay bill number. You can buy it online from anywhere in the world using a credit or a debit card. All the information about this book is in the description below. And if you have a brother, you have a wife, you have a husband, you have a friend who is sitting at home and watching Netflix, please do buy this book for them. If you are the one sitting at home and watching Netflix and have nothing to do, please buy this book and your life is gonna change forever. Because I have been doing this online and I've been traveling and I've been enjoying myself and having a lot of fun. So thank you very much, and now back to programming.
There's this patient who has had this suffering for a long time. Why is it so? And it could even trigger maybe a medical documentary.
Or research.
You know, they could enroll.
Let me ask you. If you go to hospitals in the US and Europe and around the world, they are very, like, for example, I don't know so much about medicine research, medical research for that matter. Like MIT is known for research in tech. Like right now they're leading in artificial intelligence. Right. But for example, do we have proper research going on in Kenya in medicine?
Not that I've heard of. And if it's there, this is why we are saying transparency ought to be very important. Because maybe it's there, but it is not even communicated. So how are you going to pull these people? And how are we going to have universities?
Is there cancer research in Kenya?
If there are, then it's mostly in terms of maybe updating the literature that exists, but not...
What do you mean updating the literature?
Updating the literature means you're looking in terms of what research has been done before, and you're looking to see where's the gap, but not the actual research. And this is where we are saying, many universities keep saying that there is no grant, that there is no money, that cancer research is very costly. And yet, there are PhD students paying very high school fees for their coursework. You know, and then
if for example, a group of doctors went and told Safaricom that, look, we are doing cancer research and we want
a grant.
We want 100 million.
Yes,
I think Safaricom would give them.
You think so?
Yeah,
but it also depends with the culture.
I think they would. I think they would give them.
It also depends with the culture of indignation that is very prominent amongst Kenyans. You see,
what does that mean?
Especially amongst the corporate. The corporate world likes glam. They like playing golf and having workshops, you know. But when it comes to meeting people, and this is why sometimes you also have to look in terms of what is the face of this corporate world. When you had people like Bob Collymore, Bob was very responsive. And during his time, we had what was called the Osamaria Initiative that was really helping cancer patients.
To be fair to Kenyan corporate, I think they have really tried.
They have
like
tried.
If you look at Safaricom has been very good in the tech world. They have done a lot.
But in the shadow of who? Whose shadow?
Perhaps the shadow matters, but my thinking is that there are no bold doctors coming out there and saying that we want to be equals with doctors in Japan.
Yeah.
We want to be equals with doctors in America. We want to be equal with doctors in Germany. We want to be equal with doctors in South Korea. We want to be equal to Indian doctors. We want to be equal to Indonesian doctors.
Yeah.
But it looks like that they have been bought into consuming.
Consumption.
You know?
Yeah.
So for us, we will only use medicine from the US.
That is why I was telling you it's the literature review.
You see?
Yeah,
but they are not doing enough. For example, in the tech world, there is a time a friend of mine from Poland came to do for an event here that I was organizing here in Kenya. And he has been studying Africa for such a long time, because what he has always wanted to do is to take some of the jobs to Africa. So he was very close with Ghana, and then he got to meet me, and then he started coming to Kenya and trying to see whether something can come out of it. And was something interesting that he told me is that it's really dubious. The tech capability in Africa is really dubious. I mean, and so, and it's very, you can look at it as condescending, you can look at it the way you want, but he told me that you guys have got a long way to go. And he tried to recruit some people from Ghana. And at the end of the day, he had to let them go, because he said that he had to teach them all the way from the beginning.
As if they didn't have any background.
Yes, in tech. And that is perhaps what is also in the medical field, that there's a lot of borrowing. There's a lot of people are not looking into it deeply. Like in my village, every day when people go to the hospital, they always come back with the malaria medicine. Like every other day, they come and it is like malaria. And I always question, kwani malaria is the only disease in Nyakaj? Yani hauwezi pata hata mtu na pneumonia siku moja. You can't get somebody with something else. Like it is always malaria. How?
They might call disease prevalence, because malaria is very common around the lake.
Yeah, but they could also be taking advantage of the fact.
Yes. True. After the fact.
Yes. That it must be malaria. What else can it be?
And that's why we are saying many doctors treat patients as an afterthought. There's no patient leading and letting you know, then this might be the case. You understand? There is the fact leading, and then now you try to fit the patient after the fact. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we have, and this is what they studied in medicine. So when you present yourself and you give me a case, and you present with a certain case, and I listen to you, Jagger, and say, that must be malaria. That's for you drug. Sometimes without even testing.
Yeah.
That's very, unethical. Because I did not do a test. I did not include science.
Yeah.
I speculated. And this is why we are saying that we need to move further past it. We need to have, because there's no way a doctor who trains in Kenya should just be the same as a doctor who trains in Japan. This is the same thing you're saying. There's no need that I don't know what happens, but I think some developed countries tend to shy away. They want to give you another exam to see, like you've seen it with nursing school. Our sisters and our brothers who do nursing in Kenya, they want to go to the UK, you have to do another exam. Why? It's science. So does it mean that the curriculum, the coursework in KMTC or University of Nairobi or University of Embu is less equipped to handle situations in developed countries? So I think we should be bold enough and really honest. And this is the thing we are saying. Many of us go to school for the luxury. That's part of it. Because it's supposed to help you bake the bread. But there's also looking around your community and the sense of life of how you have been who you are. And you are realizing, what are my gifts as a person? You've been very passionate about conversations. You've been passionate about tech. And this is DWJ. You're actually actualizing your dream. You're caking, you're baking the cake, but you're also contributing your gifts to the community around you, And this is something that we lack a lot. We want to do a master's degree. We want to do PhD. We want to go to school and be a doctor and be an engineer, but we cannot think, how can this be home ground? How does this improve the quality of life around me? Not just for myself, but for people that are enjoined to me. My loved ones, my community, my society. Because this is something that has so far delinked us from the philosophy of education, why we study, why we toil so much, why we have mechanics, like, for example, these mechanics who have, practiced around this place for a long time. And yet, we do not have, for example, an auto spare around here. that is strictly Kenyan.
Yeah,
You know,
or just a simple gadget that can lift the car. Like we are still crawling under cars, and
yes,
the car is not broken down. If
not
the car is
broken down.
broken down in the middle of the desert, then for sure crawl around it. But why do you have to crawl be underneath the car in a garage?
At the risk of, the car, crashing on you.
Yeah, with just hoisting the car up. But anyway, let's talk about the cost of insurance.
Now that also leads us to
Yeah.
the final reason why cancer is very costly,
Yeah.
and we'll tie it up as we slow down. So we realize that there's something called insurance coverage and penetration. So in a country, for example, it's very funny that Kenya currently, as of 2020, the latest statistic shows that there's only 19% of insurance coverage. Can you believe that? Of the all 50 million plus Kenyans, there's only 19% of that population.
And most of that 19 are people who are in formal employment.
Yes.
Almost another 90% of that 19 are people who are in formal employment that
Very
are insured by the employer.
Yes. So you can see how much untapped potential lay in the informal sector, and the difficulty in terms of mainstreaming insurance penetration and coverage. You understand? How do you reach somebody in Turkana or Marsabit or Lamu so that even though they might not be, putting a suit and a tie and going to the workstation every other day, they might be having the government keeps on saying mama mboga and all that. But you do not have the dignity that we're talking about, the humanity to see these people. You're using these people as statistics after facts, So I think that if we need to see how low insurance coverage is and how difficult it is to maintain premiums that happen every other month. For example, when I like that there has been significant changes and restructuring within the insurance sector in Kenya, particularly national. I want to focus on national first before we go to private insurance. There's been a lot of changes, and now we are having what is called the Social Health Insurance Fund, So, in other words, this move was meant to cure the ills that NHIF used to suffer from. Because NHIF used to say it is a comprehensive cover, but is it a comprehensive cover? When you're being told, chemotherapy, we only cap it at 25K a session. This medicine we cannot buy for you. This one we are buying, but you have to pay 5,000. Or as we are only paying 2,500, the rest is on you. Understand? So that is not a comprehensive care. That is a limiting. It is limited because it means that at some point you'll run into copay. You have to pull money out of your pocket and say, I'm paying for this drug. So when we have an insurance that says it's comprehensive, but in spirit and letter it is not comprehensive, then it means that many people are going to suffer losses and inconveniences whenever they're trying to access this, the medical services like cancer care. And then there is also the legitimacy of national insurance. There's a time when if you present an HIF card, they will laugh at you, particularly in private hospitals. They will decline it. In fact, they will not even ask you, do you have an HIF? And yet in America, they have Medicaid and Medicare. You flush it out and you get treated. In no way, they come to your door. When your mother is sick, you call the ambulance. They come to pick them. Or they come to treat her at the hospital, at home. Why can't we do that? It's because we have the problem of fragmented healthcare. And there's very little coordination between these two levels of government, the devolved units that are counties and the national government. And in between, there's a cesspool of corruption at Ministry of Health, at procurement, at KEMSA, at at the Office of the President. So there's a lot of corruption that takes the money that was supposed to have been meant for healthcare. That's number one way of looking at it. Number two, you find that there is very little procurement law and what we call discounted production, which is what I think SHIF is supposed to help solve. What do I mean by that? When you have a good relationship with your creditors, people who supply you with medical staff, the hospital facilities that are covered, that are accredited to receive money from SHIF, then it means that reimbursement is going to be speedy, it's going to be timely, it's going to be transparent. But what we have currently is, yes, people are covered by SHIF or NHIF, formerly NHIF, but it takes weeks or months before this money is released to the facility. These facilities are businesses and organizations. They have money, they have costs, to dedicate to particular operations around their organizations. So if that money is delayed, do you think it's going to be pretty? No. If the doctors are not paid on time and well, do you think it's going to be pretty? We know what happened in Kenyatta, for example, 2 or 3 months ago, when there was a huge crisis of a long time strike by the doctors and medical interns. And we know that whenever doctors and medical interns strike, nurses join them. When nurses join them, radiographers join them. And we have social workers. And then we have a collapsing healthcare system. So that obviously makes costs, because now it leaves you with private care. And how many people can afford private care?
It's extremely.
And then number three, finally, we have the informal sector. Those who are not always certain that at the end of the month they will get this amount of money. And so you have to dedicate maybe 500, like they capped it, to SHIF. So these are people who rely on everyday toiling to get the bread, So it's very hard to make a policy. Remember, they're saying now SHIF is going to be, it's going to be involuntary. In other words, it's going to be mandatory. You have to contribute to it. How do you contribute to it yet you can't afford even a meal a day? So there's that difficulty. And
they were supposed to start registering afresh.
Yes.
Did they start?
They already rolled it. It's supposed to officially peak in December.
What does officially peak in December mean?
Means there is a way of phasing out NHIF in transitioning, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of registry, in terms of premium rating.
How different is it going to be to the old NHIF?
There are 3 significant ways. Number one, it's going to be mandatory, which is very different. Many national insurances are usually involuntary. It means you elect to pay premium for it. You understand? So that is one of the major differences. Number 2, they're going to be using what we call social health insurance model. In other words, if you're earning 100,000 and I'm earning 30,000, then you are more likely to pay more so that you can meet me in the middle. So that the idea is when the government collects more money from a pool of the population, that it can distribute this money to benefit the welfare of the whole population, regardless of whether you earn more or not. But particularly, it's going to be more determined by how much you earn. If you earn more, most likely, for example, the people who earn 100,000 and more plus are going to be getting cut a lot. But they're also saying they're going to cap it at 2,500, because if you're earning 200,000, then it means that 2.5% or 2.7% of your salary is going to go to SHIF. This is a lot of money. And sometimes it can run as far as 13,000. So they're saying they're going to cap it at 2,500 so that it doesn't pass that ceiling. That's one angle of looking at it. The other angle is you find that there is what we call chronic and emergency fund, SAFE. So for a long time, and this is where cancer care comes in, for a long time, the top diseases that actually plague Kenya the most are hypertension, we have diabetes, we have cancer, we have sickle cell. So these diseases are, very prominent, and they are also very costly to treat. So they created this fund so that it allows for people who are faced by this fate, so that they do not need, because a disease does not knock. It doesn't write you a letter that I'll come next week. It just shows up. And then you find out it's chronic. Then you find out that it is terminal.
Okay.
So this fund is going to be able to dedicate it to chronicity and then emergency, things that just happen, like maybe an accident.
Why do people go to India and other places for treatment of cancer?
Number one, I think on top of my list, I think is the fragmented healthcare. For countries that have a responsive, efficient, affordable primary healthcare. Primary healthcare tend to focus on preventive medicine and early detection. So remember, cancer, like we said in episode 2, it's not just a singular disease. It's a group of diseases. And most likely it tends to go with other diseases, like, in terms of comorbidity or other underlying issues. So when you are able to do diagnosis very early amongst the population, and you're able to shift the perspective of the population from just waiting and see, because that is what many of us do, even in the village, particularly where the undeserving population, where there's very little access to healthcare. They wait and see. When they have a headache, they send their kid to maybe a kiosk and buy me mara moja. Maybe this is an indication of, if it's recurring, maybe it's an indication of something that could perhaps come later and complicate it further. So primary healthcare tends to focus on the tiny little details of healthcare, so that when it is done right, then it means that when you're moving to specialized care, then you have a laid-back plan. So, for example, a patient might climb up the ladder. Remember, there are levels of hospitals. And when they reach, for example, they go to, for example, Nakuru County Hospital. And they're like, no, we need to send you to Kenyatta. Because in Kenyatta, there are specialized oncologists that are focused, let's say, on hemato-oncologists, or there is somebody who deals with bone cancer, or an orthopedic oncologist. You see that? So when we have a very fragmented way of healthcare system, then it means that once you exhaust all these options, particularly public facilities, then what you are left with is India, number one. And then number two, modern medicine. What are the options that are available? In episode 3, I was telling you about how sometimes you find that there is no stem cell transplant in Kenya or in Uganda. Where do you go to? You go to where it is available. And most likely for a long time, since, especially during the 2010s, where there was a surge of cancer in Africa, many people went to India, those who could afford it. Those who could not afford it had to fundraise. Some of them had to die.
What is the affordability of going to India? Like the base value of going to India? How much did it cost you to comfortably go to India and find medicine?
The quotation alone was 4.7 million. That's the quotation. But there's also the overhead costs of like travel, staying and accommodation when you're recuperating after surgery, So there is a lot of money. For me, I think it went to the tune of about 6.3 million, So we find there's a paper by Atieno and et al. In 2018. They say that the average cost of treating cancer, they are researchers. You could, for our viewers, you could check in on Google Scholar. If you just say Atieno et al. 2018, it will give you Atieno and et al. It is associates. They are a group of researchers. So they're saying the average cost of cancer care ranges between 120,000 to 350,000 in Kenya. That's averagely, but it's never that. Because sometimes almost always it surpasses the cap, the ceiling. So that's why you find it runs into millions of shillings. You anticipated you're going to spend 400,000, and then the bill comes to 2 million.
What happens when the bill comes to 2 million and you have nowhere to get the money? They
hold you back. Have you not seen people being held in hospitals?
Yeah, but do they do that in India?
Yeah, they do. I do. My friend Jadudi had to stay there for a long time. I did that for a long time. It took the mercy of one of my surgeon doctors who paid part of the money, who waived his fee, so that I could actually go to recuperate at the Airbnb where we had rented. So the reason why people go to India is they have little hope. Number one, sometimes I think this is something we need to talk about. Do you always feel like sometimes we do not view our doctors as more qualified, particularly with, let's say, cases like cancer? Do you feel like we don't give them enough credit, like we don't trust them? There's a mistrust that you're talking about.
They have made us believe that. And I think that if you go somewhere and find very good quality of service, then you have no reason to. Well, there is the fact that a white man would always be better at treating you. But I also feel like it will really depend. People have experiences. they have been relationship with the doctors. And like, for example, my friend had an operation that went really badly, and he has been in pain for since then.
Yeah.
And it was a glaring mistake by a doctor in Kenya. Glaring. You see, like, it's something that a doctor should not do, but they did it. And we have got so many cases of doctor negligence in the country. And the other thing I also think fits into this narrative is that what is the hospital doing about careless doctors in Kenya? You know, once a careless doctor has been found out, it is swept under the carpet.
Yeah, there's no lawsuit. There's no accountability.
Yes, to maintain the name, to preserve the name of the hospital.
Yeah.
You see, so I think that there are lots of people who have experiences, and they have tried treating something in the country, and they have never treated it. And you move out, and suddenly you have got a team of doctors looking at you and figuring out what is wrong with you.
And they listen.
Yes, and listening and talking to you. And you can feel that everybody's here because of me. It's very difficult to feel like that in Kenya. You see, there are just one or two people that are along the corridors, you know, come in. 2 minutes, 3 minutes later.
There's no eye contact whatsoever. They don't even know your name. You know, yeah, I get it.
You know,
so that goes to the narrative. And also sometimes back in the day, around 2010s to 2015s, there was a lot of high-end costs. And it was better to sacrifice money, including the extra maybe flight cost to go to India.
So, for example, if I have sorry to cut you short, if I have a insurance, let's say, do they accept that you can go and treat yourself outside?
Most likely they often decline. And there's a huge bureaucratic process of getting authentication or approval. You know, you'll go through a lot of gatekeeping. And goes back to private insurance. You know, you have to write to them. You have to give them their medical history. Most of the time, even to date, there's a time now NHIF started, what is the word? Discouraging people from going to India. In fact, they will tell you, we have the doctors locally, why don't you do it here? And yet, the patient is supposed to have a right, you know, to seek medicine or Medicare wherever he feels or she feels. As long as, because why are you paying premium? You're paying premium so that you can get this care whenever, for example, maybe the illness comes next month and you are a premium subscriber, you're supposed to be able to access the Medicare that you need. But you're not getting it and you're being told you need to just have it in Kenya. Why? And so there goes also the international law of insurance.
Yeah.
Sometimes you go to India and the way they operate there conflicts big time with the insurance coverage in Kenya. And this is why it is very important when you are aiming to travel to another country for treatment, ensure that you have talked to an insurer. Number two, ensure what is the nature, what are they covering, what are your terms and agreements in your contract that you signed. You understand? How long are you going to stay there? And what is the scope of this coverage that you have? Sometimes you might find that you travel thinking that your insurer is going to cover this. Then if you go there and they tell you, no, we can't cover it. So make sure you do your due diligence and do the paperwork at least 2 months before you travel. Make sure sometimes you involve a financial advisor and a legal advisor because sometimes, you know, there's a lot of gray areas around your coverage. You might not know that, but your legal advisor or financial advisor might be able to pick a few things. And then you can also liaise with the hospital in terms of knowing, do they accept your insurance? There are some insurances that are international, like let's say Heritage, you know. Some are most likely localized. Some might cover, but
I have realized that even the international ones often
very
localize.
dubious. They're very dubious.
But often they also localize.
Yes. So you travel to India, they not cover it. Yeah. So these are some of the things you really need to look in terms of and also be very cognizant of when you're traveling.
All right. Thank you very much, Ochuka, for this wonderful episode talking about why cancer is so expensive, why Healthcare is expensive in Kenya. We've delved deep into some of those issues. So
We need to think in tying up. I think also what do you need to do? Like for example, if you're in a bad position, so you should also get to know that there are organizations that tend to offer I call it complementary assistance. Like Faraja, Africa Cancer Foundation. And then also, sometimes we also need to really commend our community, because at the end of the day, it's your neighbor who's going to come check in and bring for you a fruit or two, contribute some 5 bob so that you can, have treatment. So we need to also look at all these options. Yeah. And yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please consider subscribing. Hit on that notification bell. If you have a story you want to tell, I'm always here at DWJ. And until another episode, bye for now.
Cheers.